Welcome, everyone. This is another episode of Heretical Weekends. I am Mischievous Heathen, joined this week by Fox in the Know and A Theological Potato.
Hey.
Say hello, fellas.
Hello.
We are missing Run Gavagai Run, who I forgot what he was doing, but he's off
Spring
doing.
break.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's out there He's out there actually having a life, which is good for him.
No day.
There was much discussion going back and forth about this in our thread regarding the great debate community and stuff. And Fox hit up a good point, I believe, which we warranted was important enough to have a whole show about. And that was, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fox, the great debate community and the various attitudes that are going around. And people, how basically we treat each other, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm relatively new to this community, as you guys know. So I guess some people might say, well, who are you to come in and pass comment? But I will pass comment in respect to Matt Bell in particular. Matt Bell's not stupid. Matt Bell's he's a smart guy. He could take up the role if he was serious about engaging with people and defending his faith rationally. He could be a kind of venerable member of the community where he would be someone who people could potentially listen to, but his material is so wrapped up in kind of a vitriolic and combative style of apologetic that he's just very difficult to have any kind of dealings with. And I have had some correspondences with Matt this week on various comment threads, and basically I asked him if he makes big claims about his ability to defend theism rationally and defeat what he calls weak atheism, which is quite an intriguing position to hold. So I'd like him to come along and have that kind of communication with us. He has been quite combative. He's backed down from claims that he has very strong philosophical arguments that, as I said, defeat weak atheism. I'd like to hear what they are. But generally speaking, I think Matt Bell got me thinking more about how people like him and Trey Jadler go about doing their business. For me, if I've spoken before in relation to Trey about this notion of getting to an immaterial cause of the universe, which is also personal and isn't necessarily Yahweh. And I think that's kind of cool if that were true. I mean, there's doesn't really matter what I think or want. If it is true, then it is true, and I'd rather know something about that. Find out how exactly we do come to know if that's true. So I'm with these guys when they're trying to get there. When William Lane Craig does his arguments, I'm willing to listen. It isn't that I'm just tied to blind faith, as Matt Bell accuses me of. My atheism is somewhat tentative. So if I do come across a good argument for deism, and if someone manages to breach the gap between deism and some particular form of theism, then that's something I'm willing to listen to. But you're not going to get me there by insulting me and calling me pretentious and say I waffle on and that I derail conversation. So it strikes me as odd for anyone who would want to reach out to the community in general and say, I've got some really good arguments that I think you should hear and might make you rethink. The worst way you could go about that is just insulting people and being a dick. I really don't think why you would do that. If you're confident in your position, if you think your arguments work, you can be slightly combative. You don't have to be nice. And I'm not after someone who kisses my ass, and I don't think anyone really would want that. But we can have a robust conversation. We can have a serious conversation. And I like to think that I'm not so stupid and foolish as Matt Bell thinks I am, that I could listen to and understand his position, and I would be willing to give him some kudos just for doing his homework. I think we should all endeavour to do that. But with regards to, I mean, his general stance is that if you're an atheist, then you must have done something wrong. You must have done something stupid. There might be a few atheists that he respects more than others. But generally, the bulk of us here on the Great Debate, the people who he invites by putting out certain material on his threads to engage with him, those people, he, generally speaking, looks down on them and he thinks that they've done something wrong, that they've not done their due diligence. But I would counter that with just to say that you can only really beat the team in front of you. If so many people on Google Plus are atheists, it's generally because the theism that they've encountered has not been particularly well defended. So once you lose a belief, you lose it. I mean, why should we go around examining many of the hundreds of potential proofs for the existence of various types of gods and other supernatural phenomenon just until we arrive at something that might kind of possibly work? We're not going to do it. We're going to abandon that position and we're going to move away from it. We're going to embrace a community of like-minded people. And Matt Bell seems to find a great affront to the very existence of the so-called Great Debate community. He thinks that it's bloody-minded and strong-headed, and I think in some cases he might be right. But again, I think if you've got the arguments they're going to stop people in their tracks, then come out with them and share them with people and try and educate people, and you might find that people will listen to you. I'd be willing to listen, but there is this aggressive tone whenever I've engaged him, and I'm accused of derailing and being stupid and being just a kind of garden variety idiotic atheist, which doesn't really predispose me much to having a good comprehensive engagement with him.
He's troll.
Well, I think in a sense maybe he is, but at the same time he puts in a lot of effort. I mean, if you go on his G Plus profile, he's put in a lot of hours to analyze old atheist experience videos and transcribe them and show them that they're wrong.
And memes.
He's an old angry curmudgeon. I mean, I can't. I look at that guy and I go, what could he possibly have going on? I mean, I don't think he has that much. I mean, how do you have that much free time? I mean, and if you do have that much free time, to troll and stuff like that. I mean, do you work? Like, how do So I just figured he's just one of those guys he's a curmudgeon that way,
I think he is, and I think, but at the same time, I think if you've got good arguments, it doesn't really matter that much about your tone. But also, if you've got good arguments, and you are a curmudgeon and you are aggressive, then you really have to put them out there. You have to actually show people what they are. And I've looked at a few bits of Matt Bell's material, various hangouts that he's been on, and he explodes and he starts shouting at people and accusing them of ad homs on him and not understanding the material, and he never really gets around to explaining what these awesome, brilliant knockdown arguments are, and I don't know what they are, and I'd like to know what they are, and I could be willing to tolerate a fair amount of condescension and arrogance to get there. I sat through 2.5 hours of talking to Serge Adler, so I can deal with condescension. I don't. So I think there is that issue of him being something of a curmudgeon, and he sits there, talking, say what he does, and he's entitled to say it. And I think if you have that much time to dedicate to this, how sad it is that you almost universally despised and mocked and derided. I mean, he might think, I don't care about that. I honestly don't care about that. But why would you engage that much in a community that so hates you? That and almost entirely of your own doing as well. So yeah. I think I don't want to go on too much about the guy's character, because I don't think that demeans any arguments he might be able to present that might be actually quite good. But I've not seen them. I've flatly not seen the proper defences. I mean, he posted a link of 6 proofs that he claims justifies his belief in the supernatural and in theism, and he listed them, but he didn't defend them. And people started to point out various problems. Myself, and by no means necessarily decisive defeaters, but they potentially had something that needed to be responded to, but he didn't get around to it. So,
well, see, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but because we're gonna get real deep into Matt Bell land. But before
Scotland.
what I wanted to get to in a more general sense too, at least for me personally, is it's hard for me to even engage in somebody in an honest discussion when they feel they can't be wrong, and that's a huge one for me. There's a great, really short video by this guy named Braden Square. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but he's like a rap guy or whatever. He's like an atheist rap guy or whatever, and he's talking to these the guys on the bikes, Mormons, right? And they talk to him about Jesus Christ for like 30 seconds, and he says, "Can you be wrong about your beliefs?" And they say no, and he goes, "Thank you," and like just kind of walks away, you know. And so he goes, if you can't be wrong, then how do you have an honest conversation about anything? Because then you're just preaching at that point, you know. And part of the problem that I have with Matt Bell, you know, Arcane, and all these guys is they almost want to get you to a point where you're so frustrated that you get really angry and you start throwing out ad-homs and that kind of thing, and then they get into that persecution complex where they I've seen them in their hangouts where they go, this has been already foretold in the Bible. The non-believers are going to say this, and you know this is it. But at the same time, they're contributing to everyone's frustration. They're contributing to these negative sort of conversations. And for someone like Matt Bell, who's, I mean, we all can recognize he's a smart guy. We know that. We know he's retained an incredible amount of information. I find them mostly incorrect and wrong, but I mean, he's just, the fact that he has the capacity to hold data, I guess, in his brain, you know, is somewhat cool. But
well, I have... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to finish up, but I'm saying for someone like him, it's hard for me to take seriously because he's so insulting and so, you know, derisive. It's just you're never going to reach anybody if you're going to come on and just say, you know, you're so ignorant. You know, in this instance, he's not even going to defend these so-called knockdown arguments that he has. I mean, it's ridiculous to me. But go ahead, Tatum.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. But I have actually seen, but I don't think we should lump Matt Bell to the arcane category. I have actually seen Matt Bell admit that he's wrong on some points.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It was with he was with the Aussie in some hangout. I can't remember. It is very old, but I have actually seen that it is possible. Yay.
Yeah, I do think Matt Bell has some respect. I mean, you know, for he's not a literalist. He doesn't believe. He does believe in evolution, as far as I'm aware. You know, he has some respect. So I'm pretty sure he does. I mean, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's not a young earther, and he has some respect for science. In a similar vein to someone like William Lane Craig, who he is a devotee of. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because William Lane Craig has been doing what he's been doing for a very long time, and he's devoted a lot of effort to sustaining what I would think is quite a bad argument in the Kalam, but Matt Bell would seem to think is a real knockdown argument. So I think Matt Bell's problem, and Matt Bell has been invited, by the way, to join us. I've been in negotiations, if you can call it that, with Matt Bell for about a week, trying to get him to you know, come along for an informal chat. I called him on his claim to, whenever, you know, pretty much any time, any place, defense of the good arguments for theism that destroy weak atheism, as he calls it. So I said, okay, yeah, come along. You know, we have a hangout. You're more than welcome. And his response was to then put out a post of his own saying that he's available apparently for hangouts at this time, which I found slightly suspicious, almost as if he was maybe trying to get in somewhere easier. I don't know if that's true. Maybe that's just you know, is just a coincidence, and give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But Matt also then started to say that, well, he's not just going to come in here and have he himself defend these arguments. He wants us to put up something else which justifies our atheism, and then we have to then justify the burden of proof for our weak atheism, as he calls it. I mean, he's very much of the opinion that unless you are a strong atheist, then basically, you know, it's the only game in town. And maybe he wants us to say something about naturalism as well, because he's quite scathing of naturalism. So yeah, I mean, you know, like I say, he's welcome to come in at any time. The link's been sent to him. He's not here yet. So
I'm kind of reading his exchange with you regarding his non-negotiable conditions, and I would
That was
imagine,
hilarious.
yeah, I would imagine he's going to come in and be like, it's not the
well,
right time, or he'll find a reason.
yeah, we know that Matt Bills is I think he approaches these hangouts as a brawler, as a fighter, which is a shame again because I mean I'm not putting myself forward as some great authority. I'm just someone who's here and willing to listen to him and have an exchange with him, an honest exchange with him. But he seems to think that he'll come in here and obliterate me, which he's welcome to try. If I learn something at the end of my obliteration, I'm more than happy for that to be the case, and it could even be the open the avenue to further discussions with him.
Oh my God. I
Sorry,
just
go
saw a
ahead.
picture of Matt Bell and his karate gi. Oh my
Yeah,
God, how is this not a meme?
I gave thumbs up to that.
Oh my God.
Totally.
That totally made my weekend. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear, I'd like to hear his particular take on the Kalam and on the Leibnizian cosmological argument and the modal ontological argument, and I think he makes some inference to laws of logic and mathematics as being somehow a proof of the existence of supernatural deity.
So he posted on March 8th the 6 philosophical evidential arguments for theism / supernaturalism.
Yeah.
But then his list only has 5 things, which I thought was weird already. But maybe
I think it's because he classes I think he'd class the cosmological and the Leibnizian argument as separate. So I think
I see that now. Okay, I'm like, why didn't
lay
he?
it out quite as well as he'd hoped. I mean, he's a great fan of formalism, of formally laying out the premises of an argument and then having the conclusion follow. He's quite a slave, almost it's a kind of a fetish of definitions, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that can hamper a conversation, and you can spend so much time mocking and deriding your opposition for not knowing the specific way you use a word, or not being familiar with all areas of the literature, and you can do that, and that can fill out a time, and then you can frustrate someone, and then they can call you a dick and a prick or whatever it is. And then you can leave, or they can leave, and then nothing actually gets done. And I honestly think that for someone who's a fighter for a brawler, I think that's more what he's after.
Well, he's a karate master, not a brawler.
Well, he's a Glaswegian, and they tend to be pretty good at brawling.
I'm surprised he has the fine-tuning argument on this list. I mean,
I think it's quite a new one for him. I think he would probably use some quite obscure formulation of it, but any port in a storm, I think, really,
Yeah, I wow. I'm just surprised because I can see, like, I thought the other ones I are more up his alley, but the fine tuning argument, geez, that's like something you learn when you're in Bible school, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what they teach kids, so that don't really know a lot about the universe yet.
Well, he's a big fan of abductive reasoning, reasoning to the best explanation, and obviously there are various schools of thought out there that look at the complexity of the universe and then say, well, the best explanation is that there is some intelligent designer, and there's a lot of waffle and flim-flam that goes on to try to prove that. To me, it still seems an implausible position to hold. But again, I mean, he might come in here with some pretty good stuff that from various authors that have got some good formulations of those arguments. I mean, if you look, William Lane Craig is a case in point. The Kalam was, one variant of the cosmological argument that had been around since, at least Aristotle, and he has been responsible more than anybody of reviving that and pushing that and making people actually seriously consider it. And I think ultimately the philosophical consensus would be that that's not a particularly strong or convincing argument. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of argument it's supposed to be. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be an argument from necessity, or argument to an abductive argument, or an inductive argument, or an empirical argument. I'm not sure what it actually is. So again, if Matt Bell's listening, he's more than welcome to come in and set us straight on that. So yeah, I mean, there are some very clever people out there doing a lot to hold up theism rationally. I mean, Alvin Plantinga is probably the greatest living embodiment of that. And so I would quite happily talk to people who think these arguments are convincing and probably know them better than I do, and listen to what they have to say. And I would raise my objections, and they may well have a good counter to them. But none of them are convinced by these. None of them are theists because they find these arguments convincing. I don't think Matt Bell has those proofs up there, but I think for him it's a way of holding his own in an intellectual fight. But it's not something that he's ever going to convince anybody. So why he rails against atheists, which is something that kind of bugs me. But knows very well that the arguments he puts forward don't lead someone to belief in the Christian God that he believes in. So
he strikes me as a guy that's angry at non-believers. Like,
yes, yeah,
he has, even though he posts all these, complex philosophical arguments and all this stuff and this and that, my gut instinct tells me that he's personally offended by someone that does not believe in a God, or his God rather. It's just, you know what? I don't know what it is. It's just it's the rise of new atheism. I mean, he points an enormous amount of scorn on people like Dawkins and Hitchens and Sam Harris. I mean, he thinks they're really stupid people, and he's taken aback by how these people who he considers not having particularly good philosophical underpinnings for their atheism, they don't necessarily have to, by the way, because they're trying to communicate in a way that's going to reach out to people and isn't going to. I mean, if they go through the intricacies of modal logic, they're not likely to bring many people towards atheism. I mean, they are. I guess you could say they're evangelists for atheism.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thinks that they are very Sam Harris or Dawkins. They aren't very sophisticated philosophers in any sense.
No, they don't have to be. I mean, I quite like Hitchens' style. I always admired his style. I can't really get on much with Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. I think what they do is a good thing. They keep the debate going and they keep it visible. But I would never put much stock in all of their arguments. And maybe for Sam Harris it's because I've not listened to that. There might be something useful there. I don't want to pour too much cold water on him. But I mean, I think Matt Bell really that's what gets him. He sees a pretense in the atheist movement. He sees people who think they know what they're talking about. But if he's very devout and serious in his belief, to feel as if people like him are being marginalised and sidelined and made to look idiotic and putting them in the same basket as the fundamentalists. And I think maybe New Atheism has something has to take some of the blame there, because it can sometimes be a little bit fervent in its pushing away of theism, and it almost can put people who might be quite rational and logical people in the same bracket, or they might feel that they've been forced into the same bracket as fundamentalists, and that's not necessarily a good thing, because we still need to maintain a dialogue with those people. The fundamentalists may be lost, but
I think most of the people on atheists or non-believers on YouTube have been, at least initially, pretty open and polite. I think the veterans that have been around for a while are just pretty dismissive and sarcastic at this point, because they had their time with the Trey Jadlows 2-3 years ago with Cy and Eric Oven and all those guys. They just don't got the patience for it anymore, But the funny part to me is, and I think I said this, I think maybe even in the first episode or the first show or whatever, that for me personally, I am open to hear anybody's position, anybody's argument, and all that good stuff. I totally I'm interested in it. I want to hear it. However, for me, out of the gate, and this is like a bias that I just have, but the arguments on their own, I believe will have a very hard time convincing me of their particular creator, God existing, and that's it. It seems to me like it's a lot of hoop jumping, and in a way. I think if there was actual physical evidence or anything that they could even point to scientifically, like real science, not like Trey Jadlow's definition of science, then it would have been easily done. They would be harping on that, forever. But they don't.
Yeah.
They're stuck with these deep philosophical, positions. But I just don't. I'm not saying I can never be convinced because but I'm saying my confidence in these arguments are not very. It's not very high.
No, I mean not for me. Some of them do get quite complicated, and you really have to think through. But they're not particularly convincing, and I don't necessarily think that's the point. I think they are there as a firewall, an intellectual firewall, to keep theism seemingly rational and viable as an intellectual enterprise. But they would say that you express various biases towards naturalism and science, as if those are the only ways that you can come to truth, and science might not even be appropriate when we're dealing with metaphysics, all that kind of stuff. They're still big fans of metaphysics' power, the power of metaphysics to find truths about the world. I'm quite skeptical of metaphysics in general. I think most people in philosophy probably are even the people who practice metaphysics. So theists want to, they want to get something out. They're theologians first and philosophers second, and I think that's always important to bear in mind.
Yep.
They'll do intense amount of philosophical work, but it'll all be for some pre-philosophical belief that they really want to hold to be true. And I think if they came from a position of non-belief, almost none of them would arrive at a position of belief through philosophy, or particularly through metaphysics. Everything in there just seems so uncertain and up for grabs that you're never going to stumble across one day sat in your armchair thinking about things. Oh, there is a God. It's just no one's really ever done it or shown to be able to do it in a way that's convincing to people. And we have a position where people believe for all kinds of reasons before they start doing philosophy, and we have to be honest and say, well, that's why people believe what they do, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I would say that at least the people who are engaging in philosophical apologetics, I mean, at least as long as they're not presuppositionalists, they're going to be to some extent friends of reason, and I don't think they're going to have such a problem with science, because they'll tend to be less intimidated by science, because they'll say, well, science can do this, this, and that, but there's this certain demarcation. There's a point where science can no longer say anything meaningful, and that's where philosophy comes in, and we can use philosophy to create arguments that maintain some respectability in theism. So I think that's not necessarily a bad position to be in. If we can get all theists holding on to philosophical arguments but accepting science, that'd be a great thing. The problem is where you have some fundamentalists think that science is such a threat that it undermines so much of the literalism of theism. I think most people who adopt philosophical apologetics, they're less likely to hold on to, they're less likely to be able to maintain in their head literal biblical truth about everything the Bible says and various arguments, philosophical arguments. So I think it's probably a good thing. But we don't have Matt Bell here. I've sent another message to him, and I'm still not obliterated, Matt Bell.
He's gonna puss out. It's. I mean, what else? What else could be said about that guy? I mean, I try to look at it from like a psychological standpoint. I don't know if that's the right word, but I kind of see people that are really convinced of something for whatever reason. In my experience, it's been through, when I ask a believer about why they believe what they believe, and they say personal experiences tend to be the number one thing. But it really is like it's like a cheat to me. I mean, you guys know what a Rubik's Cube is, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen an old Rubik's Cube? How like sometimes like the colors they're basically stickers and they kind of come off.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, like a bad metaphor kind of, but solving the problems of the universe is like trying to solve the Rubik's Cube puzzle, like the right way. And these theistic arguments are them like taking off the squares and like trying to put it on the and make, you know what I mean? Like make the sides match, you know? It's like, it seems to me like science puts in so much hard work, you know? You got thousands of people going to, 10, 12 plus years of schooling, and then I got a guy that's sitting in his chair telling me I'm stupid because the Earth's in the right position in our solar system for life. And I just want to, I don't mean to poison the well or whatever the case may be, or whatever ad hom, whatever if that falls into, but I'm sorry, I'm going to go with the experts on this one.
I mean, I think that's fair enough. Matt Bell would say, well, what about the philosophers who spent a long time researching philosophy, and that's fair enough. I mean, I've done philosophy as a degree. I still find it interesting as a part-time hobby, I guess. I value it as a subject, and I think it's a useful thing to have. But I would be very, very mistrustful of philosophers saying they've proven the existence of something as outlandish and counterintuitive to me personally as a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, non-changing, all-powerful, all-loving, or maximally loving mind.
I was actually going to that conclusion of Kalam. I mean, that doesn't really seem to make any sense. I mean, someone could make an argument, but I find it pretty counterintuitive that basically that sounds like nothing. I mean, spaceless, timeless, immaterial. What else? Let's see. I don't remember. But basically, Craig's definition of God.
Yeah, where I think it's changeless.
Immaterial, timeless, enormously powerful, omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent.
I hate all those terms. I hate them all.
It's just a shopping list of things you'd really like. It's like I don't know if you've ever been into those. When you were a kid in those arguments of, well, my dad can beat up your dad, that kind of thing, and well, my dad's in the army. Well, my dad's a bodybuilder. Those kind of childish arguments where you always, you pile on a load of qualities that you'd like about someone who's going to come to your defense, and I think it's just a shopping list of get out of jail free cards and wishful thinking. I don't think things like spaceless and timeless minds and beings make much sense to me personally. I don't. I mean, there are reasons I could get into for that.
I mean, could we make some kind of inductive argument that all the minds that we have seen require brains, and how to articulate this, and God is immaterial, and therefore it is likely that God doesn't have a mind or something like that.
Well, the problem that I have with these terms is they always tell you what they're not.
Yeah.
But they never actually tell you what they are. Like, immaterial is a useless term for me because what is that really saying? You know what I mean?
It's like saying something is redless. It's got it has the property of redlessness, but it doesn't actually tell you the color. I mean, we have within our language a capacity to denote things. But it's not always clear if our denotations actually refer to some actual thing out there in the world. We need to go some further step to prove that. And I think we use language in such a way that we can infer the negative of something or the absence of something, and we can almost convince ourselves that in and of itself is a property or attribute of a thing, like redlessness. It isn't. I mean, you know what I'm saying when I say something. My jumper is redlessness. It has redlessness as a property. I mean, you get what I'm saying, but you don't get any actual idea of what color my jumper is. So it's not nonsensical language, but it's not actually referring to anything out there in the world as far as anyone can tell. What makes it true that there exists some timeless, spaceless thing that also then has seemingly like Potato says, qualities and attributes that have always been associated with physical entities. And they'll,
Right.
they'll
To me, it's just entirely, it's an entirely useless description for me. I
yeah.
mean,
I was just going to ask: is red? Is it a property of the object, or basically, when I say red, I mean, is it completely contingent upon my eyes? Basically, I mean, is color a physical fact? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, well, I think that's a different question. I'm mainly getting at the use of language to denote particular qualities.
Okay.
Whether or not we say that those qualities are dependent on our perception or if they are objective. I mean, most people would consider colours to be secondary properties of things. I think following from Locke, but not to go too much down that rabbit hole. I think the point is that we can say things, and I think Frege and Russell were quite big on this. It seems odd that our language can talk about things truthfully that don't exist, and that we don't. The Gold Mountain is a famous example from I think it was from Russell, and so we have an entire philosophical field looking at that, and
Yeah.
things like the truth of negative facts, and the do numbers really exist, or are they artifacts of language? So I mean, I think a lot of it is probably the way we use language rather than what really exists out there, and what we are ontologically committed to when we say things like, timelessness or spacelessness. I think spacelessness or space. I don't know if that's in the
it's either
yeah, but again,
use of nonsensical terms.
yeah, I don't necessarily. I'd say they don't quite meet the criteria of being nonsense, but they seem vacuous, I would say.
This brings to mind that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
This brings to mind that there was a famous question that someone asked of Bertrand Russell that, what is this God that you don't believe in? I don't remember the answer, but I think that is a good question. That what is this God that you don't believe in exactly? If I remember correctly, it took some time for him to answer. I have to find that video.
Well, Bertrand Russell, I think there's a quote where he said he was briefly convinced by, I think it was the ontological argument, which is quite a bad argument, which is basically a question-begging argument disguised in such a way that it's quite difficult to see. But he eventually discovered that it was begging a question. But he said something of, "Oh my God, God actually exists." He exclaimed, and he then had to think about it and realised actually there's not much of substance to that argument. But I think to move on to something else that Matt Bell said with reference to the atheists on Google Plus, that we're all a bunch of weak atheists. I mean, what do you think he means? What do you guys think he means by that?
Well, I think that he's saying that weak atheism means suspension of judgment, basically. Basically, it is agnostic atheism, and he says something like that. That isn't a epistemically warranted position. Hence, the weak atheism is an irrational position to hold. But I don't know if that follows, since suspension of judgment isn't a claim either way. It doesn't seem to require a justification. I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, there are like 3 possible doxastic attitudes, and usually positive requires justification and negative too. But I'm not sure if suspension needs warrant.
Yeah, I think.
I'm not making sense.
Potato took my answer.
I mean, I think he might have a point where there is this laziness that a lot of atheists have. We're the ones who don't believe in something, so we don't have anything to prove. I mean, well, that's fine, but ask yourself the question: we also don't believe in Bigfoot or the existence of grey aliens. But why is that? you can give a case. It's not controversial in those examples to give a case of, oh well, Bigfoot's just such bullshit. I mean, all those photos, they look kind of crappy and fake, and the people who believe it look like they're trying to make money out of it. And well, wouldn't they have found a body by now? And how many of them can live? And it's it just seems implausible to me. And that is a justification in a way in and of itself.
Yeah.
As I tried to explain to Matt Bell is, one of the reasons why I don't believe in God or gods is an inductive survey of the claims that I've encountered, which have failed to convince me that they've met their burden of proof. But I don't hold to a very, very strong position of absolute certainty on that. And it's something oversimplistic, in my opinion, of having weak atheism in one hand and then strong atheism in the other. Because it seems to me that there will be a spectrum, and you would plot yourself somewhere along there, and you might even, in and of yourself, until pressed and challenged, not really see where you are on that. It might actually surprise in the course of conversation that you discover, actually, I'm really quite firm in my beliefs, and I really honestly don't think there is a God, and I'm almost certain. I mean, you'll get some people like Aaron Ra who'll say, I'm certain that the God of the Bible can't exist. Because he's certain, because he's looked at the claims, and he sees that it looks to be a copy of previous deities, and the Bible, the biblical account, cannot be true given what we do know is true about the world. So I would support those kind of positions. I would have confidence in those kind of positions. I don't think I've necessarily done all the work to come to the same level of the same strength of conviction that someone like Aaron Ra would have in that respect. But yeah, I mean, generally approaching the subject, I have heard quite a few philosophical arguments, scientific arguments proposed, and I don't find the God of the Bible to be any more convincing than any other position, particularly. And I don't think the default position is to believe, and then you have to have really, really super strong positions to move away from there, or else you're being irrational. And I think that's what Matt Bell almost seems to be hinting at.
Yeah, but I think that generally when we say that, well, I would define my atheism as Stanford does. So it is atheism means a negation of theism, the denial of existence of God. So that, and usually when we say something, I think it is true that when we believe something, it needs some kind of justification. So if I say that there is no God, I mean, that in itself needs some kind of. I could be saying that I'm not confident that there is a God, right?
Well, I think that's a good point. I think we have to as well realize the language we use and the way we express things. When we say, for instance, I just don't believe in ghosts. You're not saying you're absolutely certain that there aren't any ghosts.
No. But that needs some kind of justification, some kind of, at least.
But it might be actually you've not got an enormous amount of justification behind that. So I actually think some theists might have some point there when they're trying to push us to come on. So tell me why it is we've all been exposed. Well, most of us have been exposed to theism. Why is it just didn't work for you? Why didn't it click with you? It's not enough for us to then say, well, I don't have to tell you that because because the burden of proof is yours. We do take a position on this question. It's not as if we're not defining and we're not proving the existence or justifying the existence of a negative thing, but we are justifying a position we take. And if someone says, well, I don't think the idea of God's particularly intuitive. I don't see why there has to be a God. It doesn't really explain much for me. Those might not be well worked out or particularly good reasons, but they are enough for that individual to not have a positive belief in a God. So I think we all fall somewhere on the spectrum. I would like to think I've done a fair amount of due diligence. I'm willing for Matt Bell to come in and tell me I'm completely wrong on that, but he's ducking it at the moment. So I think I'm standing on pretty solid ground. But there's always the possibility of being shifted on that ground, one way or the other. And I'm not going to spend, from a pragmatic point of view, I'm not going to spend my time scouring over every single argument ever put forward by anybody, and take the instance, the existence of grey aliens. I've come to the conclusion that it's bullshit, but that doesn't mean I've gone to every Kansas farm boy's house to see if he's got an alien implant in his neck, or I'm not going to go into every field to check if there's a crop circle there and do test analysis.
Yeah,
but
you shouldn't have to. Is what you know what I mean? Like whatever happened to like the I don't know if it's called I know Dillahunty says this a lot. He says the null position. Is that what?
No hypothesis. Yeah.
Where I mean, when you think of something, as a human being, like a clean slate, for example, and someone introduces an idea or a concept like a god or aliens or whatever, like I'm kind of in that firm position for me where you're open to the idea of possibilities, because you're not completely closed-minded, and you kind of want to hear, you want to hear what the argument is or what they have to say, and that's fine.
Yes.
However, saying I don't believe you, is probably, I guess you can call it a position, but it's like.
I mean, if you say that you don't believe, then you need some kind of reason why you don't believe. You can't just say you don't. I mean, at least I think so.
Well, no, but I mean, okay, you hear the argument, and then you go through it with them. Let's say they have it all broken out by premises or whatever. Let's say you give them your justification for why you don't believe them. I mean, it's not. It should be a done deal after that. I mean, I don't understand. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be stuck to this burden that it seems that Matt Bell has been trying to throw. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a very heavy burden because he wants to insinuate that the only reasonable position for an atheist to take is an incredibly strong view of atheism, which he calls.
Yeah, that makes no sense. I mean,
the
the whole point of epistemology is to be warranted or have a justification, but it is not about certainty, epistemic certainty.
It's a red herring. It's a straw man that I think he wants us to lure us into claiming. All right, yeah, okay, I think that, and then he goes, haha, you've now made a truth claim. You have to justify that truth claim. I've seen him do it a few times. He wants to do it, but I think the one question I'd like to ask Matt Bell is, well, what would it take for you to no longer believe? What evidence would it take for you to give up your theism, or is there any evidence that would? I mean, we're often asked, well, what would it take for you to believe? I mean, by exasperated theists that think, well, there's nothing I could say to you. Your mind's made up. You're closed-minded, as if it somehow shows that we're closed-minded. But I'm pretty sure that I can't say anything to Matt Bell or to William Lane Craig that will make them no longer believe.
I kind of agree with you when you. I was thinking about this as you were saying it actually, where he's trying to get you to take to say that you made a truth claim, and I don't you. I mean, this is me personally. This is just my personal opinion, but the theists, especially the ones on YouTube, over the past couple of years, have been getting hammered when it comes to like burden of proof.
Mischievous Stevens, sorry to interrupt. Matt Bell has said he doesn't have the link. I've sent the invite to him.
Oh.
How do I get him? How to actually give him the link? Can you copy it into the chat, and I can.
Can't you press the plus button at the up of the screen? Invite people button.
It doesn't seem to be working for me, but it might
it's
work.
It's black for me too. I think the Heathen has to do that.
Oh.
Yeah, do you want to let him come on in?
Yeah. Does he have to be in my Google Plus?
Just press the plus button and type his name.
All right.
See what happens. Well, that's interesting. Maybe he's been watching and has some remarks to make. Be interested to see how he comes into this. I mean, I have about an hour, so we can chat for about an hour. But beyond that,
it's not coming up for me.
This is annoying. So is there a way of? Do you have the link that we can?
I posted it in the chat. There's a lot of Matt Bells. Who'd have thought? And none of them are.
One is enough.
Yeah, definitely. Right, well, I've copied that. I'm gonna paste it into the message, and I don't know if that's gonna work. Hopefully it will. And then hopefully we can have Matt Bell come along. I mean, I don't know how he's going to approach this. Again, I said he plans to obliterate me, but he's got an hour in which to obliterate me, so he's going to have to be pretty quick fire with his arguments, I guess. Who's taking bets on it's going to be Kalam and Leibnizian, I would say. But it might take us to a complete. I think he might try something completely new on us to make us look like we're a bunch of idiots, and then he can claim victory. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think he's going to go straight into the insults. He's an
there is
that is true.
Yeah, he doesn't care for me too much, which is fine. You know, maybe I am a tad too pretentious every now and then. I don't hold.
We think you're wonderful.
I'm not an angel by any stretch, but I would like to think I'm sincere. I mean, I still have chats with Trey every now and then, and I've tried. This week I tried using an example of Lego bricks.
I saw that.
I didn't see that.
Didn't work. So you know, if I was just after Hollywood, shock tactics, then I probably would spend my time still trying to get through to Trey. But it is a failed endeavor, I'm afraid. Trey's beyond hope.
As a side note, I sent him a private message on his YouTube page. I guess I don't know if that's working, and I put him in my circles. So I'll try that again. But yeah, it looks like you kind of got so mad at him.
No, I did, and again, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to go too far because I'm thinking it's Google Plus and we all have lives and we're all humans, and even if he is one of the most stupid people I've ever had any dealings with, I think I'm warranted in saying that because a Lego brick example doesn't get through to him, then I don't know what will.
I have to see that post.
Oh, it's awesome.
Where is it? In what video?
I'm not even sure where it is actually. It might just be on one of the threads where I've been speaking to Trey on my page.
I'll try to find out.
There are so many of them because me and Floyd have tried very hard, and I think Trey's now gearing up for another hangout with a guy give me a shout out called the Rumpus, who's seems quite he's quite funny. I think he's got Trey's number, and I think he's going to be as polite to him as I am. But he's
sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, I saw him asking, I think it may be Skylar Fiction, what is the link to his hangout too. So I don't know if what he's doing.
Maybe he's expanding out to do group hangouts, which I think for Trey would be a good thing because in one-on-ones it's just the word salad flies, doesn't get any progress on it. But yeah, I think for Trey, me and Trey have kind of reached an impasse. He seems convinced that I'm so stupid that I just can't get what he's saying. So we are joined now by Matt Bell. Hello, Matt Bell.
Yes.
How are you doing?
So Matt, welcome to the room. Did you hear any of what Fox and Potato and I were mentioning?
No, I was in another hangout.
You were in the Skylar Fiction one, right?
No.
Oh, never mind. So you've been a topic of some of the show here today. I understand that you and Fox have had some exchange back and forth, and
very little of substance.
You would agree to that. I think that's fair.
But I think a majority of that exchange was you guys even settling on a condition for you to come in the room.
Yes, because Fox in the Know is such a coward and so inept that the ability to defend his atheism that he tried to have a discussion, an informal discussion, basically set up so that he has no burden of evidence at all in the discussion. So what he's looking to do is take pot shots at theism, but protect atheism from having any justification, warrant, or credibility attached to it.
I tried to explain to you, Matt.
I'm not finished speaking. I actually agreed to that, just so I could have the opportunity to expose his ignorance about the philosophical arguments for theism, and to expose for the live on-air hangout people that he has no ability at all to offer a single justification for his
Wow.
atheism.
Okay.
Atheism
All
with a small a there, not a capital A.
Okay, you're rambling now, Matt. Well, this is the thing, Matt. I think it's clear for anybody who's had any observance of our interactions that you have put out various arguments that you claim justify theism from a philosophical perspective. And I have asked for you, and genuinely asked, because I'm quite interested, what they are, and not just a list of what they are, but a defense of how they work. And you said that you would be willing to provide them anytime, any place. So I tried to get that, which we agreed, which was relevant to our conversation, to be a part of a hangout. So as for justifying atheism, I pointed out to you earlier that if arguments for theism fail, then I think that is built into the justification for atheism.
That doesn't logically follow. That's non sequitur reasoning, an argument from ignorance.
How is that an argument from ignorance?
It doesn't logically follow that if it were the case that theism could not be justified, that God does not exist, and atheism is justified. Atheism there being the assertion that God does not exist, not this useless, wimpy, weak atheism I lack belief in God.
That you don't like
to any human being.
That you don't like because you want us to adopt a stronger position.
I'm more than happy to interact with individuals who take such a weak position.
Well, no, clearly you're not, because you.
Well, clearly I am, because I'm here.
Well, you are here, but all you've done for the first 5 minutes is spout a lot of invective. So why don't you actually get to the point of defending?
Well, I did. I've laid out what I can do and what I'm prepared to do, and that's put out the arguments for the philosophical arguments for theism, and expose at the same time that you cannot justify atheism, whether it be weak atheism or strong atheism. You, of course, will not try to defend your weak atheism because you're unable to do so.
Well, you're dodging issues.
On the other hand, can put forward arguments to justify my theism,
might as well begin,
and
Mark,
that
because
would
we've
be
got an
what I'm
hour
trying to
for
do.
you to start to do it.
Who's the moderator in here?
Oh,
we will let you, Matt, start to defend.
Who is the moderator in here?
Oh God, you guys are nuts, but you're hilarious.
Who's the moderator?
Okay. Hey, that would be me.
So there needs to be a set before this begins.
True to form, Matt Bell.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go on,
okay.
Why do you
if you're the moderator,
then ask him a question. Matt, let me ask you a question, because we haven't spoken yet. So I don't want to. I know you Fox have a thing going, and and that's between you guys. I was just curious about something. So you said that the weak atheist definition is useless, but if someone is telling you that this is their position, would it? I mean, don't you get frustrated, or don't you feel it's at least a little bit offensive, as you being a theist or a Christian or whatever, if we were to tell you what your position is and then argue against it?
No. If you can present arguments substantiating your assertion, then that's a good argument, and that's something that should be accepted.
Okay.
I have a question for Matt. What it takes for atheism to be justified? What will that require?
Justification, justifying arguments or reasons.
Okay, and what would count as just?
A sound atheological argument.
Okay, if I could demonstrate that God is a illogical concept.
Which God are you talking about?
I'm basically talking about William Lane correct definition of God.
Which God are you talking about?
The Bible, Yahweh.
So I'm not talking about the Bible God. That might become one of the arguments I present, But when I use the word God, I'm referring to the deistic God, the God of Theism, the God of the philosophers. These are philosophical arguments for the
Well, why
God
don't
of
you actually
philosophy.
present them? Why don't you start presenting them, Mark?
Because I was trying to answer a question from your colleague.
Yeah, well, I am now
Don't you
asking
think that's a wise thing to do if someone asks me a question to try and answer
don't
it?
you think the point of
The
answering
point
what we've
is, there
been
needs to be
discussing?
some ground rules, and that is that there cannot
fuck's
be any
sake.
over talking.
Okay, all right. Let's have some sort of decorum, at least a little bit. Okay, I know you guys are all fired up. I know that. So I'm just trying to get a little order so we're not talking over each other. Matt, if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying that if you present an argument or someone presents, a position or these philosophical arguments who are, they're complex and they take a lot to understand, at the end of it all, if someone says, I'm not convinced, are you suggesting that they have a burden of proof if they're not convinced by said argument that you presented?
Yeah, if they cannot give good reasons for their rejection of evidence, then they are just looking for an excuse to maintain their position and not being honest in dealing with the evidence. So that would be irrational.
Would a sufficient objection be, let's say, pointing out in the argument in question, like pointing out a premise that's incorrect or
Yes,
a logic?
of course.
Okay. I'm just trying to get an idea. Okay. So it's not. So what you're saying is you can, a theist can present an argument, and as long as the person that's hearing it can actually give a reason to why, other than like, I'm just not buying it, which isn't good enough. They would have to actually get into the reasons why they're not buying it, is what you're saying.
Correct.
That doesn't sound unreasonable, I guess. Oh, okay. I was done. That was my question.
Can we get on to the philosophical arguments that justifies theism, please?
Yeah, as soon as there's some ground rules set up. Until
No.
those are set up,
Can we just do that?
there won't be any discussion.
Mate, I know that you're trying to dodge presenting the arguments and defending them, because that's pretty much all of our interactions.
You're not the moderator. The way it works in a
Stop
debate.
interrupting and talking over me. I didn't talk over you.
In case you don't know about how.
When I was talking, right? Why are you talking over me when I'm?
In case you don't know how debates work, a moderator sets the rules before the.
You
You understand that, yes? So you need to set some
discussion. Is an informal discussion where we've asked you.
Yes, based on what?
Specific conditions.
Based on what?
I asked you because you said you could do it. So why aren't you doing it? Why are you spending your time now? Why are you spending your time now not doing the thing that you said you can do very, very easily?
To make sure that
you can speak when I've stopped talking, and you can start the justification arguments. Right? Instead of waffling on about ground rules, you're not setting the ground rules. The ground rules are we'll allow you to speak, we will allow you to present them, and then we will investigate and we'll go through each one. That's
as I stated in the proposal.
Okay, guys.
Well, you need
typical Matt Bell derailing.
If you are the moderator, get control of the hangout, or no discussion will take place.
There's not going to be any discussion because this is your game plan. This has been your game plan from the moment.
I'm sorry. I did kick him.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, this guy is just impossible. He comes in, he throws his weight around, he talks over things.
Oh my God.
And it's all a deliberate game. It's all designed to avoid actually getting in to the nitty gritty. He comes in, he insults me, he says I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, fine. Well, sure. Instead of going on about, I mean, that whole point of justifying it, we are not. It isn't a justification to say that the claims that we encounter for the existence of things that we don't believe in as a default position. That is not a form of justification. I just don't get it.
I got a question because I haven't been in this situation yet. But how do you? I mean, you can't. Can you people? I mean, like I muted people and then they just unmuted themselves and just kept arguing.
I think everyone can basically mute everyone, and he was.
Yeah, that is true.
So what's the point of yelling about a moderator if you're just going to unmute yourself and keep yelling?
Because basically he wants to be able to dictate the hangout. He wants to come in. He wants to bore us all, waste as much time as he can, going through the rules of a debate. When he agrees that this is an informal debate, so I said to him, I said, why don't you start to present the arguments? We'll let you. When I stop talking, we will let you speak. We will let you go through them. We'll then analyse each and every one of them. That's unacceptable for Matt Bell because Matt Bell wants to talk about or get all his various conditions in. What other hangout on Google Plus does that happen? This is an informal environment for discussion. It isn't a discussion about how to have a discussion, which is what Matt Bell always does. Then annoys people, insults people, makes them want to, punch the screen and walk away. But all the time, oddly speaking, these knockdown arguments for atheism that he has, he isn't presenting them. He should just start to do that. Did anyone say we're not going to let you present them? We're not going to let you get across to us the reasons why these arguments work? I mean, he's not able to do that. He doesn't do that on any of the threads that he puts out there. He's not done that in any of his engagements with me. I've tried. I've seriously tried with the guy. I've kept some degree of politeness and decorum with him, but he comes in, you chat to him, you're friendly to him, and then he launches into a personal assault on me, basically, which is fine. He can do that, but he does himself absolutely no favors, this guy whatsoever.
Yeah. I did call it though. Within his first sentence, he was like, "Fox is too much of a coward." I'm like, "Yes, I should have bet money on this one."
Me, who asked him to come to a hangout, but
Right.
basically he wants me to have a set of arguments and a burden of proof that I have to meet. When I've said to him, "Well, we could go down that avenue at a later point," but the whole reason why we're having a hangout, the whole thing that sparked this, was you saying that any time, any place, you could defend the arguments that you think defeat atheism, and justify theism from a philosophical perspective. Now, he said that, not me saying he couldn't do it. Come on in and do it if you can. I didn't say anything like that. He said he could do it. So I said, great, let's do that. Let's have a hangout. Then the conditions start coming in, and it's a deliberate tactic. It's a deliberate tactic to divert attention away from actually getting into the details of these arguments, because I think they fall apart. Now, that's my perspective. I might be wrong about that. I was willing to have Matt Bell hand me my ass and tell me why the Kalam argument, why the Leibnizian cosmological argument, why they're all so bloody brilliant, and why anyone who doesn't believe them is an idiot or is lying to themselves. I was willing for that to happen, but strangely enough, what we get within 5 or 10 minutes of him actually being in this hangout is derision, rudeness, this belligerence, this bloody-mindedness to lay down the conditions of how the conversation has to go. It's an informal conversation. It isn't you dictating to everybody else.
Fox is pissed.
I know.
I am pissed off because
warranted.
I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Every single person who commented on the idea of a hangout, every single person said, "Don't do it." The man's a dick. He's just going to come in there. He's just going to throw his weight around, and then he's going to end up getting booted. And I said, "Well, yeah, I think that's probably what will happen." And I didn't kick him. Mischievous Stephen did. He's.
Oh no, yeah, I was me.
Within your rights, but the conversation was going nowhere.
It quickly devolved into a Nadia's room hangout where everyone was just yelling at each other, and I try to play good cop. I try to play good cop to your bad cop, So I was like,
you did.
Let me ask this question, and then because I did kind of want to know what he meant by justification. Which, if he's saying, "Hey, look, I have an argument," and a follow-up at the end of it is you're going to say like, "Nah," then okay, I get what he's saying in that point, but I have a feeling it's not that simple. I have a feeling that once you do give your objection, then comes more rudeness.
But I'm sorry, but again, to go to another example, or to reuse an old example for the existence of Bigfoot, right? It seems to be an absurd claim to someone who just doesn't have that belief. But some people might just say no, it can't be, and then not give a justification. But then there actually might be someone who has looked at Bigfoot studies and the evidence that Bigfoot believers have put forward for the existence of Bigfoot, and have found that inconclusive. Now, there are things that should be the case in the world if Bigfoot exists, that the people who proponents for the existence of Bigfoot are not finding. So the absence of evidence is, in that sense, evidence of absence. You know, there are things that we should be able to discover about the universe.
Right. But
That should be a certain way, and the fact that we don't is evidence against the kind of beings that theists are proposing exist.
right,
So
and
it is a form of justification.
I don't necessarily agree with that. The only difference being that with Bigfoot there is supposedly, by the way, physical evidence. So you actually get to look at something, right?
Right.
Whether it's a fuzzy picture or something, so you can find the evidence inconclusive.
Which is where
argument to me is that there's no physical evidence involved, so they're stuck with these philosophical arguments, which is fine.
Mm.
Then
actually present them.
Right, and then right.
I mean, you could make some kind of ontological argument for Bigfoot, but I think the evidentialism is the way to go.
Right, and that's the thing.
He would just accuse us of a bias there, which it could be argued for. But the thing is, then these philosophical arguments, if I've looked at these philosophical arguments and found them unconvincing, then to me that furthers my justification that. I mean, look at it my way. There are people in my life who historically have told me that there exists a God of various different kinds. And I've never instinctively believed it. I've never had an emotional reason to believe it. I never looked at the things that I claimed about this God and thought that seems particularly plausible. So there is that, but there is also the fact that I've studied in some detail the formal arguments that people put forward to prove the existence of various kinds of God, whether it's the God of the philosophers or whether it's Yahweh, whatever or Allah or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Pretty much every claim every claim has failed, as far as I can see.
Right.
To me, that justifies my position. That justifies my position in not. I never had a belief to lose, so I've never encountered the evidence that would go about convincing me.
I mean, people who have never heard about God, we could say that they simply don't have any doxastic attitude towards God. But you folks, we could say that since you have good reasons to believe that philosophical naturalism is true, so that you possess, and of course, if philosophical naturalism is true, then God simply, that is antithesis to God, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, if naturalism is true, then supernaturalism isn't.
But I'm not necessarily sure about that. I think the field is complicated in that respect. But the point is, you can't skewer people for not having an absolute justification for the existence of God, or for fairies, or for Bigfoot, or for UFOs, or for ghosts. I mean, come on. My approach to say giving entities existencehood is that I have to, first of all, see what that proposed entity is. I have to examine the evidence put forward by other people, because I'm not going to get off my arse and go around and look for it. Why should I? Because there are an innumerable number of entities that could exist, right? So from a purely pragmatic point of view, I'm not going to do that. So if someone comes across, comes up to me with this particular entity that they want to say exists, and if time and time again the arguments they present and the evidence they present for the existence of this entity, which varies from time to time with different people, like I say, whether it's Yahweh or whether it's the God of the philosophers, whatever it is, I am not convinced. So it's not getting into, the basket of existent entities, that same way that trees or cats or human beings, they are in the basket. I can justify why they're in the basket, but I can justify why Yahweh or the God of philosophers isn't in the basket. I mean, does that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that not a justified position to take? I mean, how dare he say to me, without knowing anything about my epistemological standards or general background, how I'm not justified. I mean, I've not even made the claim that I can't justify the weak position that he claims I have. I've said to him time and time again, I find the lack of good evidence and good arguments from theists to support my position on the existence of God. That's my justification. It is a form of justification. I'm not turning up test results. I'm not spewing out syllogisms, but I don't have to, because I don't have to do that for the non-existence of Bigfoot or the non-existence of Vishnu.
Right. Well, I think it's different too. Okay, assume for a second, Fox, you were a believer and I wasn't, and we have a good friendly relationship. And if you were to provide an argument, in the interest of conversation, we would get into, unless I wasn't convinced by your argument, we can get into why, because there's a mutual respect there.
Mm-hmm.
But with Matt, there doesn't seem to be even that. Like, he requires these things to even have a conversation. Well, first of all, he's going to tell you out of the gate, he's going to tell you that your position is pretty much shit. Like, you can't even be like an agnostic atheist. That's just out of the question. You're silly already if you're choosing. But then, then you have to, the only thing you really can be is a strong atheist, and then it's almost like he's trying to cornhole you into making an absolute or you know what I mean,
because that's an easier position to attack. I mean, what is wrong with an individual turning up to a debate or about the issue of the existence of God and saying, look, I don't hold the belief that God exists. And I've had several people come up to me in my life, and I've read these accounts, and none of them have convinced me. I'm just not feeling it. But I wait to be convinced. Now, if you honestly believe that there is a God in that situation, you then present the arguments for why. Okay? You don't turn and go, how dare you come to this debate without an absolute defeater for why I'm wrong, blah blah blah. That's not the way debate works. And,
right.
and we're not, why it has to be for him this huge battle of worldviews. I mean, we could have had a series of genuine discussions, right? Serious discussions. I know he's pawned Scott. This is someone who I don't think has any formal education that I know of. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Not that it necessarily matters. But how dare he pour scorn on my position and the beliefs I hold towards these particular arguments, and just say off the bat that they're wrong and that I don't know what I'm talking about, and he's going to expose me, and he's going to obliterate me. I mean, it's just hot air. It's just guff. I would say to Matt Bell,
I think what he wanted to do was to have everybody muted, and while he drolls on for maybe 45 minutes to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
No one wants to sit through that.
He already despises me. I have his backup for whatever reason it is, and I'm already getting these ad homs. So I'd say to Matt Bell, look, we could have a discussion set around a specific. If we do have a specific subject in mind, and it is your claimed ability to defend theism philosophically, why can't we have that? I mean, what's so bad about that? Oh, it's because you don't have a burden of proof. Well, that's not the point of the argument. Say if we were having a debate about one argument, is the Kalam cosmological argument the existence of God sound? I mean, you could spend 2 hours on that, and all we could do is present. I would present my case for why I think it's not sound. He would present his case for why I think it is sound. We could do that, and we could do that for each one of these arguments. It isn't like we have to have this huge bash. What I've just described would be a far more academic environment, where you present a paper or a proof, and then someone comes up with objections to it, and you then counter their objections, and then you have a debate and a dialogue. That, to me, is a far more amicable and productive way forward. But he's not interested in that. He came in here. He wanted to sabotage the conversation. He's tried to dodge out of it plenty enough, but I called him out on it, and his arrogance meant that he couldn't outright refuse it because he would look like a coward. So instead, he took the more or less cowardly position of coming in here, shouting over everybody, calling me out, calling me stupid, calling me a coward. I said before, and he can go back and watch the start of this hangout. I'm not his best friend. I don't particularly like the guy, but I'm willing to hear them out. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to be proved that I'm wrong on these arguments, but I want to hear what the arguments are. I'm not asking for so much for him to actually defend these arguments, to rightly. And what we could do, actually, going forward, that might be productive. So we're not talking over each other. Is if Matt Bell, if you want to start another thread on your page, and you won't do this because it's too much of a cow, you put these arguments for the philosophical defence out there, and for each one, I'll link to a Google document where you can lay them out, and then you put in your own words, not copying and pasting from anywhere else, and I'll do the same, why you think these arguments are sound. And we can go through each premise and each component of the argument, and we can have an exchange, a written exchange, where we can both link to sources, and we can both properly get out what we need to get out without someone talking over everybody. I'm willing to have that discussion. I'm willing to see it written down in front of me and undeniable, for everybody to see. I'm willing to do that, but I don't think any progress is going to be made from a Hangout, because I don't see how he can not do that. I don't think he will not do that, because I think he does that for a very particular reason. And the reason is that he doesn't want to actually engage with people. Doesn't want to actually get the arguments out there. He just wants to come in like a thug, basically, like a battering ram, and just spew invective over everything, poison the well, rile people up, insult them. I mean, I know that he'll put out some twisted little thread or meme or something out there on his Google Plus page, and I don't necessarily say in that brief exchange I did maybe get a bit heated, and I wasn't the best I could have been, but he has that. Why is it that Matt Bell has that same effect on everybody? And again, he would say that I'm just another empty-headed atheist who doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, I actually did a little bit of looking into some of the arguments that he would present. I took the time to actually so I could potentially counter what he had to say in a way that would make him feel like a little bit vindicated for talking to me. I mean,
we can do it next week. We can dedicate a show to disassembling his arguments if you want.
We could do. I mean, I think there's a lot that can be said about what's wrong with the Kalam and why I don't find it convincing. But it would always be better to have someone making a rebuttal for that, for someone there in the room to defend it. So if there is anyone else out there who can do it, who is an absolute dick to everybody,
it's hard to find that on YouTube.
Yeah.
By the way, as a side note, I just wanted to say one thing here. Matt Bell entered the room at 1:04 p.m. my time, and he was booted at 1:13 p.m. So he lasted a whole 9 minutes in the room.
Longer than we thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of silly that you can't like the moderator can't permanently mute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It needs to be looked at. I don't think it's been set up for this kind of environment, antagonistic environment. I don't think it's designed for that. I think Google innocently didn't expect there'd be people like Matt Bell out there who would just rudely talk over everybody, because they think, well, why would anybody want to talk to those guys? I mean, that's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, we're gluttons for punishment that way.
But the thing is, no, he doesn't make much of an effort in Hangouts anymore, and part of that's because people don't really want to talk to him. Because I mean, you could
I
tell
wonder why.
So when he came in there, I said, hey, how's it going? Something along those lines,
Yeah.
Anything. There's no, hey, thanks for having me, or none of that. It's just derision and scorn. You are scum beneath his boot, and he just wants to grind you into the earth. That's all you are to the guy. Where do you go with that? It's just
there's nowhere. But I think it's kind of funny. I think you said like "Welcome to the room, Matt" or something like that, and then there was kind of a pause, and then I tried to say something like, there's been some conversation between you and Fox, and he said nothing of substance. And then when you guys started, and then you cut back in, and you were like, well, why don't you present us with those arguments? And then as soon as he started going off, calling you a coward. I'm not sure if you heard, but Potato and I were like giggling, which probably didn't help the situation. but there's something about having him so angry for no reason. Just it was
a joke. The man's a joke.
Yeah, we were just like, I mean, it was kind of schoolyardish, but it was hilarious.
I just. It's to me. I don't know if it is just me. I mean, anyone else who watches this video, please comment. And if you do agree with this, is it just? It's so obvious to me that the whole thing, the whole shtick is an avoidance strategy. I don't know who it was, but someone commented that Matt Bell is smart enough to know that his arguments are full of holes, but too arrogant to ever be able to admit it or to back down.
That sounds
Probably JDK, Mike West.
I think it probably was JD actually. You know, I mean, we could go back over some of the things he says on his threads. I mean, they're all basically they're elephant traps designed to. I mean, they're always quite badly worded, so someone will respond and put something, and he'll go, oh, the idiot who said this doesn't understand, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll go back and he'll edit things and say, I've edited it because you're obviously too stupid to understand it. And or he'll post something and it won't kind of make sense, and then you'll put something and he just won't respond to it. I mean, it's still up there. Go and have a look, anyone who's interested, unless he's deleted it, where from March 8th, where he puts out those 6 proofs that are actually 5, I guess. They're there, they exist, and he has not done really anything to defend them. You know, and various people have come in and said, oh, this isn't going to end well, Matt, you've done this before. People start poking holes in it. I looked at some of the philosophical ones and offered up just a few of the that came to mind, standard intermediate level objections to things like the Kalam, the Leibnizian cosmological argument, the modal ontological argument, which I would really like to know what Matt Bell knows about modal logic. I'd be interested because I've not really heard. I was genuinely kind of looking forward to him presenting and putting that forward, because I think the only other person I've heard even mention the modal ontological argument is maybe Seamus, and he made a bit of a pig's ear of it. But it's a difficult argument, so it tends to be that theists stay away from it because it's quite complicated. So I was hoping that he would be able to give a proper, robust defense of the modal ontological argument.
Oh my God, we totally need to invite Seamus. I mean, defend his argument, if he's willing.
I'd love to speak to Seamus. I don't think he's. I mean, you know, it's night and day with someone like Matt Bell.
So isn't he crazy too, though? I heard he was kind of a turd.
Seamus? He's not crazy.
Oh, okay.
He's a nice guy.
He's alright. He puts himself out there. He listens to people. He lets people speak. You can actually have a discussion with a guy. You know?
Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else then. So sorry, Seamus, if you ever see it.
But you know, just to get back, Matt Bell, why do you do it? What is to be gained from humiliating yourself repeatedly on YouTube? The irony is, I mean, I could be, you know, I could be a complete fraud. I could have no clue what I'm talking about. I could be reading the script in front of me, and he could have exposed me. He could have showed me where I was wrong. But no one believes him when he says this about various atheists. When he says they're all stupid and they're full of nonsense, because he says it about everybody. And time again, he's tripped up over his own threads, and so no one takes him seriously. So here was an opportunity for him to actually, you know, floor me, lay me out, and show that I didn't know what I was talking about. And people would have gone, well, Matt Bell, yeah, he's an absolute dick, but at least he knows what he's talking about. I've heard people say that before, you know. Oh yeah, Matt Bell. I kind of like Matt Bell. Yeah, sure, he's an asshole to people, but he knows his shit. Well, I'm not so sure he does. I think he knows the formalism. He's read the arguments. He knows how to recall the premises. I think he knows how to do all of that, but I'm not sure how comfortable he actually is. I've never really heard him in a proper philosophical discussion be particularly forceful. So I was waiting to see if that existed, but I just think it's just so blatantly obvious that the guy is a bit of a fraud, because he's just you know, he's not willing to put his arse on the line and say these are why these arguments work.
Yeah, it's. I think he's. I think he's just had it. At least with the. I mean, he posts stuff online, but it doesn't. It seems to me like he's kind of just burnt out on the whole thing. As far as what I mean by that is, he's gotten to a point where he's able to crawl in a hole and just pull the dirt over him. If you know what I mean. And he's content with being there, you know. And it's kind of like. I don't really I don't get into religion a whole lot in my personal life, you know, but, when it comes about, a lot of times people have that mentality where they don't want to discuss things, or or they just want to like put their head in the dirt, or like jump in the hole and pull dirt in after them. And it sounds like he's at a point where if you don't completely agree with everything I do on my terms and this and that, then it doesn't even warrant my time. The whole discussion being worth my time.
But again, I mean, I said to him, we're going to do this hangout around 7 p.m. GMT. Fair enough, we were a bit late to start, but he wasn't messaging me saying, okay, where's this link? I'm going to get in there and obliterate you. He was in another hangout. So he turns up, knowing that we only had a small amount of time anyway, and then just launches straight into his tirade. I mean, I'm trying to think back. Was there anything he had there that was warranted actually us saying, actually, no, we better shut up and let him speak? Because from how I saw it, he comes in and he starts to drag us over towards talking about justification for atheism rather than him talking about theism. He had one goal, I think, in this entire process, which is to basically block the discussion from him talking about his justification for theism. But do you guys
by the way, oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, he said that he was defending God of the philosophers, but I can't find out rigorous definition of that kind of God. I mean, I've gone to Stanford, and it seems pretty vague. I mean, do you know some good definition of God?
Well, I think
I can't. It seems very vague. It has different properties, and it doesn't seem to be much. So I think he really should have defined his terms first. I mean,
the god of the philosophers is something like god of deism, but specifically the gods argued for by people like Plato and Aristotle, who, despite living in polytheistic times, in their writings did tend to speak of a singular god in a singular sense.
I think
certain properties and qualities. It's not particularly well defined, but the idea is that within the philosophical tradition, there's always been a god which has been defended and proved by philosophical arguments, as opposed to just referring to scripture, to the details of scripture. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's more along the lines of he knows these arguments can possibly get him to a god, just it can't make the leap to his god. So he kind of put that sort of, you know what I mean? That little clause in there where that way he doesn't get like that's the first thing we did with Trey was how do we get to your god from this argument? I mean, Matt Bell is smarter than Trey is, and I think he realizes that. So he shores up that hole by just starting off with saying, it's this other generic, like this general God.
But it's just the preamble is just preaching, it's just preaching, not in the sense of he's given us scripture, but of him just this. I don't know. The discussion wasn't heading towards where we asked him to start. It was just him filling air, just him patronising us and telling us, well, you're all of a kind of people who don't basically know what they're talking about. You don't know what you're referring to. You've got this misconception of what God is. Well, this is the God that I'm arguing for. I mean, he asked Potato. I mean, what God do you mean? So again, I mean, we're having this discussion, and Matt Bell presumably wants us to have a very strong atheistic position on all gods and every single one.
But I don't know what the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I don't know the difference between philosopher God and biblical God. I mean, they have some extra properties, but I think it is pretty... I think the immaterial, timeless, and spaceless. I think that those are, how do you say, necessary properties for God, for being supreme being.
Yeah, I think it's basically it's just a piece of empty rhetoric. This appeal to philosophers. Again, it's this assumption that philosophy has a privileged place when talking about this, and that there is the God of the philosophers, which is this very detailed technical construct, arrived at by these various arguments that all seem to merge into the same kind of being. That's the case he's trying to build. He's trying to not go straight to Yahweh. He's not going to argue from the Bible. He knows that's not going to get him anywhere. So his whole MO is to talking in terms which are not related to one particular personality or the revealed word of God.
Yeah, he tries to argue to some kind of a God and then to the specific theistic God of the Bible.
There'll always be a leap. They'll always make some leap further. So once he's battered you over the head enough with the God of philosophers or the God of Theism or whatever he thinks he's arrived at, then he's going to make some leap further down the line. They always do that. It always seems to be quite a weak.
I mean, I have to be agnostic towards his God because I don't know how he will define it. I mean, he have to define it first. But if I don't know what he's talking about, then there's no other possibility than to be agnostic.
You need justification for the thing that you don't know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, that's a great point because, again, we are faced with 1,000,001 different variants of God. I mean, God is love, or God is the literal. God is the God of the Bible. There's all different kinds of gods that we're faced with, and we have different levels of justification and different confidence in our justification for various different kinds of God. So, I mean, he's then going to try and hit you up with something which he thinks you've never heard of before. I mean, it'll probably come to in the course of the conversation that it is just a tarted up version of a different kind of, of Yahweh by a different means. You try to smuggle Yahweh in through the back door.
Yeah.
But so if he is genuinely going to put something down on the table that we have not considered, well, what possible defense are we going to have for something that we've not even considered? I mean, imagine in the year 4000, there are some people living on a space colony who start worshipping a god. Do I have to be justified in my rejection of the existence of that god? I mean, I've not encountered that god. I don't even know if anyone ever is going to have different kinds of god in the future or long lost gods in the past that someone might discover some pottery that they dig up in the ground somewhere. Do I have to have a ready-made strong defeater for why that god can't exist?
I mean, if you don't know, I mean, if you just have heard about that god, but you don't know any properties that God have, the only possible way is to be agnostic. I mean, you can't claim either way. You just don't know. But let's say if some Indian will define some kind of totem to be God, well, then of course that will be, we have empirical evidence that totems exist, and I would have to accept that as God, but that would be kind of not very interesting philosophically.
Someone says that Elvis is God.
Yeah.
I think Elvis did exist,
I'm agnostic towards that.
By the way, Fox, you know how you were saying when the first talks about Matt coming into the room, you got a lot of poster responses saying it's, bad idea or whatever. I was cracking up. I was reading a couple when I was on my lunch at work, and it was like, I think there was like complete waste of time. He's a moron. It was literally nothing positive. Nothing like, it could work out. It was like
the guy's a bully. I mean, I think he approaches every hangout like it's a fight, and so he comes in, he tries to intimidate, he tries to throw his weight around, he tries to unsettle people, to insult people, to make them feel bad, and all the hope is that derails the conversation. And personally, if I spent my days, as he seems to do, reading up these arguments and finding all these various proofs, I'd actually want to present them. I'd actually want to get into a room with people, even if they didn't believe me. I'd want to actually get that out there and defend that. So why isn't he doing that? Just bear with me a second. What's up?
It's because he can't. I mean,
hey guys, I'm gonna have to go in a second, so just bear with me a second.
Oh, no worries. We're probably gonna close it up anyway. We went way over our normal time, and so I'm pretty sure it's a little late on your guys' end of the world. It's only almost 2 o'clock here. So
Yeah, I have to go too.
Thank you for, I guess thanks, Brett, for showing up. You provided us with an extra 40 minutes of content, which is always fun. And we now know what it takes to get Fox pissed. So there's that. Well, this is Lee, the Mischievous Heathen, Fox in the Know, and Atheological Potato signing off for this week. We'll see everyone next week. Have a good one.